Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm going live today here on Sunday, February 13th at 4 o'clock Pacific time, talking about the upcoming full moon in Leo in Magha Nakshatra, February 16th, 2022. And as it says here, as you can see, it says, truth is like a lion. It does not need to be defended. Just set it free and it will defend itself. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool statement there. And we're going to be talking about that today. One second here. As this is upcoming, of course, and it's coming at the midway point of the Aquarius cycle. The sun is in Aquarius, as you can see here with the chart I have. One second here. Whoops, for some reason I forgot to bring this chart up. As you can see in the chart here, that on February 16th, this full moon is happening in Magha Nakshatra opposite the sun in Aquarius. So that's really powerful. And we'll be talking about balancing and harmonizing our individuality and that lion-like truth and conviction we have inside with the collective qualities of Aquarius that bring us this awareness that it's not just about our own individuality, that we're here to actually serve a higher purpose. And we always think we are serving a higher purpose. So I'm going to get into things like our social media presence and the things we're doing to express ourselves as unique individuals and how we can better align with the collective. Now, I also want to let you be aware, as you can see at the bottom of the chat here, there's a link to a class, and I just dropped it in the chat, that's to a course called Begin, Reset, and Restore Your Vedic Astrology Practice. And you can learn my latest strategies and organizing techniques in over 2 weekends, March 5th and 6th and March 12th and 13th. It's not just me, but me with 4 of my best teachers, Dr. Melanie Iyer, Elise de Villiers, Casey Scott, and Alexis Cox will all be helping me. 8 powerful 2 to 2.5 hour sessions taught over 2 weekends. You could see the whole system of astrology laid out, again, not just with me, but with all these teachings reflected back. My most well-known at this point and eminent access to those recordings, even if you can't attend in real time. But when you register now, actually, again, I'm recording this in early February, still about a month to go. When you register now, you get access, though, to 3 very powerful bonus classes, in addition to other classes that the teachers are now teaching between now and then. But you get one on this hidden strength of each of the 12 astrology signs as measured by the signs that the moon rules and the sign that the sun rules. So when you measure each ascendant relative to Cancer and Leo, you see this very deep vulnerability and overcompensation action. That's a very powerful insight into each of the 12 zodiac signs. And then there's also a bonus class called Releasing the Serpent, which is a technique that I developed for understanding the difficulty of the lunar nodes. And again, you get access to these right now, as well as the Great Consultation course that I taught years ago. Actually, not that long ago, about 4 years ago, for how to do a great consultation. So if you're someone who is an advanced student and you're starting to do readings, this will be a great way for you to also get that in place. So you can check it out, beginningvedicastrology.com, for that. So again, as it says here, full moon in Leo in Magha Nakshatra, February 16th through the 22nd. Now, I really like this quote. I saw this online a couple places. It says, truth is like a lion. It doesn't need to be defended. Just set it free and it will defend itself. But part of what we're having to do right now in this day and age is also set the truth free, right? We're trying to set the truth free. We're all looking for the truth, and many of us even, consider ourselves, or some consider themselves, they call themselves truthers, where they're, setting the world straight about the truth and things like that. So all of our versions of truth right now are very important. We're all looking for what's the real truth behind all of the illusion. These are big issues in our day now. And we're all trying to align that personal truth with a higher collective truth or higher collective cause. Now, the collective aspect of it is the Aquarius theme. And you can see that the sun, especially, on the 16th, the sun will be in Aquarius at about 3 degrees, and the moon will be opposite at like 3 degrees of Leo. This is when the full moon happens. This is about 8 a.m. Pacific time on the 16th of February, which is Wednesday. Had to look at the calendar to see which day of the week that is. So between now and then, as I'm doing this on Sunday, we'll feel more and more of this approaching relationship to truth and what is real and what are the consequences for speaking the truth or not speaking the truth. What does the truth look like collectively, a collective truth, as opposed to an individual's courage to, let's say, stand out from the herd, stand out from the pack to be the one who delivers the truth. These are very big themes, of course, in this world now. We're all looking to see who is the big truth teller, who has separated himself from the masses. And again, this takes on a lot of meaning, especially like with media, politics, and things like that now in our world. I'm not going to get into all those kinds of things here. You can draw your own conclusions from recent figures and whatnot, often because people then lose the message. It becomes hard for them because we're so polarized, and people, because I won't attack the people they want me to attack or support the ones they want me to support or something, all of a sudden the whole forecast turns into that, which that's the least important thing. As it relates to being in your life, it's also a time for you to really introspect about your relationship with these themes, right? And your relationship to culture, that includes the country you live in, even like the politics you have, even if you don't have them, your spiritual growth and your spiritual community, your social duties and responsibilities and obligations, or your lack of desire for them, whatever it might be. We have a collective nature where we see ourselves as part and citizens of a country, advocates of teachings and whatnot, participants in a certain culture, right? Like with me, the main, culture and collective identity that I identify with is this identity, or this collective identity, of things like yoga and astrology and higher teachings, and bringing that kind of collective idea into consciousness. That's my highest leverage or level of, universal, my individuality aligned with the universal collective is mainly along those lines. Now, of course, though, within those lines, we also each have how we think the world, how we'd like to see the world operate morally and things like that. Other issues that are big for me are things like, if not strict vegetarianism, because some people need to eat meat or whatever because of their diet or whatever, but because of health issues and whatnot. Of course, it's not to moralize about these things, but it's for the humane reasons, to be very conscious about, especially factory farming and the torture of sentient animals and things like that. That's a big issue for me, right? And it's devastation, not just for the harm and the cruelty that it causes, but it's devastation on the environment, and always. So that's a larger theme and a larger collective cause that I will speak up for. I'll be a lion of truth for things like that. I'll talk about the truth in those ways, and I'll kind of release that lion of truth. Once you say that truth, if it's a real truth, then that lion will hunt for itself. It'll defend itself if I put it out there. But there's a fine line between saying, okay, well, the truth will defend itself, and that we have to defend the truth as well. It's a very tricky thing. In fact, I was recently on a panel where I talked about the need, and I do believe we have this need now to defend these truths, defend them. Again, not necessarily, well, they have to be against something else because you're defending against misinformation, but to not be defensive or to be aggressive about it. For example, we don't have to be so aggressive against the thing we're against. We can just be a strong champion of that thing. It's like bring that lion of truth in front of everybody, and then the truth will take care of the rest. For example, right? Others see that like some of the causes or issues that I champion, even in astrology, for example, is doing, I don't say the teaching's the right way, like I'm the only one, but I mean doing actual teachings that's backed up by the text and the textual traditions, where we're doing it, again, in a proper way, at least. Within that, though, there's a lot of variance. So very, very few things do I disagree with other teachers or astrologers or whatnot. People can do, it's so open. But there are certain things like, people who know my work know that I definitely make sure that people understand that, for example, the zodiac traditions of India, that's a thing that people have gotten confused about. So again, I'm not into making a big deal about the others or arguing or fighting, but I'm going to introduce the truth. I'm going to put that lion in front of you and you'll see it for yourself. Now, of course, you put that lion of truth out there with good research. Every text, for example, like with the zodiac issue, every text shows it, says it, it's very clear. I don't have to fight with people about it. No reason to fight and get into that kind of thing. You just put it there, and the people who want to know the truth, who authentically want to know the truth, will find it, and the truth will hunt them down. It'll show them, it'll reveal itself. This is also a reason why there's no reason to be, contentious about any kinds of issues, especially with individuals, to be aggressive, like with individuals on any level. Is you put the truth there, you research it well, you put it up there, and it's there. And the ones who are really interested will recognize it and know it. See, because the problem we have now is everyone isn't really interested in, quote, the truth. And now because we have this world of truth that's actually half mixed with bias and confirmation bias, where we're so manipulated through media and all kinds of stuff that's now out there. And we're so much waking up to a lot of these things that, frankly, many people have been asleep to for decades. Some of us who've been paying attention to this stuff for a long time, the biggest thing that's different now is that so many people are now awakening to things that have always been happening, but they're awakening to the truth in the midst of in the biggest misinformation age ever. And the truth they're awakening to is actually more propaganda than actual fact and truth. And I'm speaking very generally now, so don't project anything on what I'm saying. I'm not saying that anybody is necessarily wrong on one side or the other. All of it, truth is a very messy and very sticky thing. It's very nuanced, right? Facts are inflexible, but the truth within the facts, for example, is very nuanced because it depends on how you're looking at it. For example, there's that famous story about how, if you've ever heard the story of three men were trying to describe an elephant. Have you ever heard this? This is a way to really understand the nature of reality. It's a story to understand the nature of reality. And there were three men, and they were each describing an elephant. And the one man said, "Oh, an elephant, it's like the trunk of a tree. The elephant is like like the trunk of a tree. And you because he was hanging on to the leg. And then another one said an elephant is like a large mountain, right? Because he was on its back. And then another one said, no, it's like a large leaves. But that's because he was near his ears. Another one said, no, the elephant is like a serpent, like a large snake. Well, that's because he was near its trunk. All of them were right from their perspective. They were all describing their truth. But someone who was standing back watching it said, all of you are wrong. You're all wrong. It's not a tree trunk. It's not a mountain. It's not a large leaf, and it's not like a serpent moving. It's this animal that's bigger than each of those little things you were describing. And this is what we need to be careful of, particularly in this world now, where we get one side of a story, and because it plays into our biases and our preconceptions, and again, these things are very deep. Our biases and preconceptions to see the world a certain way, we get information that confirms that, and then it gets conflated in a way that says, see, that's why all of those people are wrong. And it's like, okay. And we stop using discrimination to say, yeah, but what did the person who said that have? Did they have anything to gain? What's their bias? What's my bias? Is there a more nuanced way to understand this? Is this just, am I just hanging on to the leg of the elephant, thinking the whole elephant, that the elephant is just like a tree trunk? Am I on its back thinking that the elephant is a mountain because I like the view up here? Am I thinking it's the large leaves blowing because I like the breeze that comes from its ears? So again, I'm talking about this because, again, this axis of Leo and Aquarius is this way. It's these oppositions. And when we get full moon and new moons, these oppositions come into contrast. And the oppositions that come into contrast have to do with Leo and Aquarius is wanting to see everyone's view and understanding the collective good underneath it all. Like there's a larger collective that we all share, and we want to accommodate everyone's view. We want to, again, make the world a better place for us all, and we imagine that the things we're energized toward as an individual is also serving something higher. But again, these issues are very polarized because we can feel also kind of consumed or subsumed by the collective and stop honoring our own individuality, which is the Leo end of it. So, I did a social media post on Instagram. I'm just going to read some of it, where I actually talked about this. It was also on Facebook, where I also talked about how, where I really talked about this sort of collective idea. And I said like this, I said, there are so many shadow versions of the truth now that are mixed with power and ego trips, especially with social media. Everyone wants to be an influencer and spread their truth. And there's nothing wrong with that because we all understand now that we have influence. But how are we using that influence? So we have to be careful because, again, whether we know it or not, people are watching. Like I know it because people have been watching me do this stuff for a long time. This is why you even notice I'm careful to get into certain things, because I want the most important parts of my message and this message to be understood. And I know that if I start even offering every time I offer even neutral opinions about things, everybody thinks I'm biased against the thing they're biased against. Like, oh, you're against this thing. Oh, no, you're against this thing. I'm against everything, according to whoever is watching. I wind up triggering everybody because I talk about the whole thing. So people say, oh, you're so this way. Oh, you're so that way. Because when people get triggered and people have a strong bias, they're going to want me to to confirm that and denigrate the opposite. This is the thing that we can get stuck in very easily. So whether we know it or not, like when we take to social media, like to rant about personal grievances or the things that we don't like or whatever, people are taking notice of that as well. And we're starting to notice, or maybe we're not noticing, what strong personal influences, our influencers we are. And in fact, I think many of us have managed to really influence ourselves into isolation because we're really magnifying a lot of our personal edges, and they get very distorted and amplified, especially through the lens of social media. And one of the things I'm saying here is that we have to be careful sometime because, again, social media really amplifies and distorts our perspectives, but it also is a record. There's a legacy there. And I'll just give an example of a few things that I see people often, like when we amplify something, let's say on social media, it might just be a momentary thing where we're, where this meme, this like internet meme might represent, 1/10 of how we feel about something, but it's resonating with us right now. So we share it, but it might be something very polarizing. And the people that are reading that, they don't really know that this doesn't sum up your entire view on something because it doesn't really look like that. There's no context for that, right? And again, especially these days with all of these polarizing memes that come out, everything is a polarizing hot take is what they're called. Hot takes. This one's totally right. This one's totally wrong. And again, maybe we don't even think that, but maybe it sums up our view a little bit better than the opposite hot take. So we might share that and then be surprised that people react and respond to it. I see a lot of people, again, particularly like, around certain personal issues. I'll just give an example. And I'm hesitating right now to say this because I don't want to upset people because it's the one that it pops into my mind a little bit, I think, because I've been the most surprised by it. And again, it's actually not meant to be personally insulting, but it's just an observation, particularly with some female friends that I know, and I know them, and I know their views are quite nuanced, especially about men and dating and all this stuff. And just surprised at some of the things that they'll share sometimes, especially like on Instagram or something like that, which are very polarizing, like around, again, how things like how men are narcissists. And if they really cared about you, he would da-da. And like, again, this very like, really intense thing. And again, I'm aware of it because I've spoken about this quite a bit, that I've seen how this kind of language has really gotten into our culture, and particularly that particular thing within like relationships. This whole meme about, the narcissist empath kind of thing in readings with female clients. I see so much of this amplified online. And again, these are people that I know. And I've even a few times said, boy, that seems pretty harsh. Like, particularly like on Instagram or something, not to try to criticize them, but just to say, do you know how that looks? They're just like, and they'll be kind of laughing off like, well, it just kind of da-da-da. It's like, yeah, but people are watching. Like, this is really harsh. And I say this as well, even to like, as a way to define what someone might be looking for in a partner or something. Do you realize people who might be potential partners are reading that too? Again, this is kind of what I'm saying as well about how we're magnifying things about ourselves that maybe in the moment we're like, you know what? I agree with this. This is that and this is that. And so I'm going to amplify this very polarizing view, and then also wonder and not realize that it has an effect. It has maybe an unintended effect, right? And I know I'll just be honest, I know it's happened in my life before, particularly because I share a lot publicly. And I know that in the past, when I was less aware, I would just be like, well, this is what I think, and realizing how it really offended a lot of people, and I needed to be more careful about that. And so I've learned from this myself for sure. And, you know, realizing that it's not helpful to necessarily just charge in there with my opinion and my view, because not only is it polarizing, even if I think it's right, but it's not really helpful necessarily. And it's not creating the world that I want to be in support of. Because again, in the moment, it comes out much less tolerant than I feel about it in general. So again, I'm talking about these things both personally and collectively, because that's also kind of the way the Leo Aquarius blind spot is. It winds up running a lot around these edges of, well, this is what I think, and I need to express my truth, and and I'm a lion, and a lion roars, and then, oh, now why is everybody running away from me? Why don't I have a community? Where did my tribe go? Why am I isolated now? Well, lions are isolated creatures too, by the way. Because so we have to watch the blinding effects of things getting polarized. And again, I used one example of women that I know and that languaging, because it's been very noticeable to me. Part of it is probably because I really notice it. But also it's one of the things I noticed that I know is not also speaking for their deeper nature. They don't really see it that way. And by the way, they've reflected that back. Oh, I just, of course it's not everything, but I also see it again, I see it also with male friends, and more, not just, male and female, but what I've noticed with some of the male friends is with things that have to do with politics and other things where we're not noticing. It could be male and female, actually, not necessarily just male, but where even a political message or meme that we're amplifying is perhaps even a lot more polarizing than we intend. Sometimes we intend it, but realize when we're doing that, it might not be speaking for the totality of our views. And that's really what I said, even in the recent post that I did, like on Instagram and on Facebook, that, we have to be careful because, is posting something on the internet really making a difference? Again, this was the thing I'm asking, like, okay, this kind of, I'm an influencer expressing myself and I'm making a difference by putting this message out there. Is that really what making a difference is in the world? Again, making a difference in the world used to be something like karma yoga. I mean, it's actually a very well-defined concept in Indian thinking. Karma yoga, which is service, where you like literally go and like feed, give people food, feed them, or you show up and actually serve and actually do something to help people in this way. So again, ask yourself, are there unintended consequences of this like truth lion that you're setting free? Are you sure that's really the lion that you want to hunt? Because you set the lion, you release the lion, it's going to go and it's going to reveal a truth. A truth is going to come back. Are you sure it's the truth you want? Because the truth might be that the truth that it might be sending out might be wrong, because this thing might be speaking for you. And again, I think it's one of the things we really need to consider now about this meme culture that we live in. We're always looking for something, a meme or a thing to speak for us. This link here, watch, here's what I think, a link to something. Like when having dialogue with people who can't express themselves except through links from a website, again, it's kind of like, where has our own voice gone? That's not being a lion, or that's not speaking a truth, certainly not a collective truth. So again, I'm trying to be neutral in this and explaining it both ways, because again, we do have to speak for our truth. And I'm, as one I'm always out here speaking what I think is the truth. I definitely advocate for people speaking their truth, but also noticing and watching how I see so many things. For example, I've seen a lot lately, and again, these are current topical things. I've used the example of like the Rogan for the last couple of weeks. It's a very good case study because this is someone who has been speaking his truth and this lion of truth for quite a while. And now he's had to retract a lot of it and go, oh, you know what? This really wasn't what I intended. And he's had to apologize. Now he's come out, actually last week came back and said, oh, actually, it's just a mainstream media political hit job, and like a kind of flailing with what is really going on here. Like, am I really speaking the truth, or what's my truth? And we can actually see with what's playing out with him, this kind of thing really in contrast. The individual lion of truth, and now, whoops, I offended people. So sorry, you know what? You're right. I went too far. That really wasn't in the collective good. And then coming back again and going, well, wait a minute, maybe it's all just political hit job or whatever it might be. And so I've been talking about that story because, again, we can see it really showing a lot of the astrology of the times. We can obviously, in what I'm saying now, you can also see that. So these are huge issues now. This is why I talk about them and try to use things that we can all see in the world as as examples. Now, again, it's also Magha Nakshatra, and Magha is ruled by the Pitris, or the divine ancestors. And so those Pitris, those divine ancestors, are the ones into which and through which we get our teachings, right? And now is a great time and necessary time to be putting your teachings into practice and the real depth of your teaching. Because, again, the things I'm talking about now about how we might be, messing it up, and or how we're doing it well. Like you'll see, you'll be rewarded for those good messages now and for that truth that you advocate. If you're a strong lion of truth, you'll feel good about that, and you'll be empowered by that, and you'll feel that the clarity of that message, right? But we can see, again, for certain messengers who haven't, you can see the kind of the confusion and disarray because they're not in alignment with their teachings, with their rishis, right? And we all have teachers and teachings and a standard, whether again, it doesn't have to be this kind of formal guru or something like that. Although those things are important, we all have some kind of teacher and teaching and standard of communication and conduct that we're aspiring to. One second. It's kind of hot here in San Diego. It gets hot quick. So this nakshatra of Magha, ruled by the Pitris, or the divine ancestors, very much about that king on the throne. Of all of the astrological indicators, this nakshatra of Magha is one of the most powerful. And by the way, this is also why in practice, this zodiac integrity that I talk about, I don't just talk about it because it was written in the texts that way. Of course, every text did show it and did show that they understood it, and there were no mistakes. But part of the reason what we do is we look in the texts to see if they were correct in what they said, to see if they were confused, to see if there was inconsistency. Of course, none of that is there. But we also then look and see if it works. Because if they said all of this stuff, they might have thought they were correct, but does it work? Again, one of the reasons we know this works is because that beginning part of Leo is Magha, where the king is on the throne. Couldn't be more clear than that. That's Leo. Now, when you use, for example, tropical zodiac, this same section of sky is now in Virgo. Most of it is in Virgo, right? So it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. The king on the throne is Virgo? Of course not. It's Leo. It's like, bam, right there, right? It's right there. And so, and by the way, you see this all through the zodiac. But again, it's explicit, really. Once you say that Aries and Ashwini are at the beginning, then all the other nakshatras line up, and it's not speculative. So Magha literally means the mighty, the royal. Its symbol is literally the seat that they would carry the king through. Have you ever seen like Cleopatra, where she sits on that chair, and then they carry her through. It's called a palanquin. They carry her through. Everyone's cheering. That's the symbol of this nakshatra, is that king on the throne, Magha, the mighty. And so this really shows that you are a powerful being, and that the seat of your power, and literally the seat, the royal seat, the power that you're sitting on, the support of your actual power. Again, these symbols are very telling. They're not just arbitrary. It's not the king's army or the king's, crown. It could be any of those things. No, it's the king's seat, which is the thing that's propping him up, that's supporting him. I should say supporting you, are those teachings. That's the foundation of the whole thing. The king is on the throne, and the foundation of that is what we're talking about here. And the deities are the Pitris, or the divine ancestors, which are the great rishis that dispensed this knowledge, this yogic knowledge, this Vedic knowledge, this wisdom. You hear me talking about it, but I learned it from the rishis, from the great texts that were passed down from the mist, into the mists of time, who went into these states of samadhi and this communion with the whole, and emerged with this divine teaching. That's the source of the knowledge, right? I might be the source of it for you, but my source is way back into the Pitris, right? And so that's the source of everyone's power. And by the way, it's not just abstract and metaphysical like that. In a more practical sense, this nakshatra, this is why it is related to things like our family, right? Because the origin of our power in this lifetime was our family. We were born. First, we were born. We came out from a woman in a family of sorts, one way or another. And there was that's the source of your power. It came from that lineage, from that family first. Now, again, then we take those early teachings, and then we're supposed to connect them with transcendent teachings. But like, for example, when people have a lot of planets in Magha Nakshatra, like in their birth chart or something like that, their family will be very important to them. They'll often be very concerned. They'll be often, very, I wouldn't say necessarily attached to the family, although that's part of it, but they'll be very, defined in many ways by, literally, it could even be things like nationality, or, and often they'll be, especially if they're powerful planets in Magha, they'll come from a powerful family, literally. And so they had privilege or whatever it might be. And it's a great source of pride. Again, Leo. But again, it can also be something where they get kind of stuck in the family of this lifetime. Again, and even like serving the family business because the family business was prosperous and And so it can be a trap like anything else. What it's supposed to lead back to are the great ancestors, not just our ancestors in this body and lifetime, but the ancestors that were transcendent of that, right? So this is where your power really comes from. And now, especially for spiritual people or anyone listening to this who thinks astrology is important in their life and all that, it's a great time to really connect to those teachings that take you beyond just this world and this lifetime. By the way, that's a good opportunity for me to also talk about this course that I have for those of you who listen to these updates and kind of dabble with astrology, but you haven't learned it really formally, or you have studied, but you want to see it organized. This Begin, Reset, and Restore weekend is going to be very powerful for organizing all the information that you've gathered, even if you've been studying off and on for years. Again, I guarantee it's probably not that well organized, especially if you haven't formally been trained. And even if you have, a lot of times, frankly, one of the things that started me off on a journey to actually teach astrology when I started off was that things weren't that well organized. There's a lot of data out there, but where do you start? And where do you start? Well, you need to start with the Indian teachings, the transcendent teachings first. That includes things like the astronomy, cosmology, culture, the Vedas, all of that. Then you get into that sacred timekeeping, comes down into the planets and the signs and how those things are organized as the zodiac, how our karma comes down and takes form. Then we have the astrology houses. Then we start looking at the lunar nodes, the eclipse points. Then we have the nakshatras. Again, this is all based on reading the Rashi chart. And then we get into things like the harmonic charts, aspects, yogas, and ways to actually read the chart. And so you see this laid out for you over 2 weekends. Again, it's for all levels, and I have some great assistance, and you get 3 awesome bonus courses when you register now. This says 12 hours of classes, but it's actually, I just did almost a 2-hour class with one of my teachers today, and there's 2 more of them left. So it's really going to wind up being close to 20 hours of bonus classes, if not more, by the time it's done. And you have access to most of that right now when you register. It's not that expensive at all. So again, you have, lifetime access to all of those teachings. You can go back and watch over and over again. And so these are the kinds of things that this is what the Petries or the divine ancestors really refer to. They refer back to these timeless teachings and this timeless wisdom. And what happens is we lose it when we come here on Earth. We get stuck in our materiality, in our emotions, in our drives. And what happens with things like these lunation cycles, these full moons and things like that, is the emotions and the attachment and the drama and the ego, which is really how we're living our life, gets very amplified. It amplifies these things collectively. This is why I can talk about things in the world, and when I refer to certain controversies that are happening or certain situations that I see in the world, we can all relate to those things because we're all living under the same sky, right? We're all living under this same sky. We're all, going through these same kinds of things. That's the collective that we all share, but we also all have an individual experience of that. And I see my excellent student Debbie is here, and she said that she's already signed up for that course for those weekends, and the bonuses are great. Yeah, I mean, I put a lot of time into these things. These bonuses, frankly, the bonuses themselves are worth the price of the course. It's always like that. And by the way, that's also I've studied business a little bit, and one of the things they say that one of the best things that you should do is offer bonuses that are worth twice the amount of the course. That's like a baseline. They were worth twice the amount of the course at the beginning, and I just keep adding more because I like to do it. And I like to give my student teachers an opportunity to also show up and teach because they love to teach it. This is all labors of love. We love this. I love teaching this. Elise de Villiers, who taught today, loves it. Casey Scott loves it. Dr. Melanie Iyer loves it. Alexis Cox loves it. We love this. We're sharing the thing we love with you. And you get to see us talk about this and bring our love and joy to it and learn along the way. So it's also just a great way to learn astrology. And I know because I've taken classes my whole life. And I know I know how these things can go. And it's so much more enjoyable to learn when people are enjoying themselves and talking and they like each other and they're reinforcing the systems, and you see these precise methods work over and over again in a way that's very approachable. You see people just like you who started or had been gathering information and then it came together, and you hear their transformation story as well. This is why it's also great to have other voices. And I like it too because they're my friends. And it's much better instead of just sitting here on my side of the computer to have someone else there, reflecting the courses back and whatnot. Lisa said, I've not taken any astrology courses yet. Is this a place for me to be? Absolutely. This knowledge is available to everybody. Everybody can learn. And again, that doesn't mean that it's dumbed down for people that aren't advanced, because it's also very organized and will help those who are also advanced to not just hear it again, but hear it in a more refined way. But absolutely, this is something that you can learn from and take advantage of. And again, as Trudy said, there's always so much material. It's great. Yeah, Trudy's been studying with me as well, and I love to do it, and we get paid for it, but it's also the value is ridiculous. And so, yes, Lisa, you can definitely come in. And again, the other thing I do is if it really didn't work for you, I give people back their money, and I flat out say it, try it. Hardly anyone ever does. It's just hardly ever. But of course, but just to keep that in mind, that these qualities of truth and teaching, this is also what this stuff is about. We're here to know ourselves, self-knowledge. And Leo is a sign of self-knowledge, really, as well, where we want to know the truth of who we are. And we're meant to connect with these true teachings. And, by the way, one of the easiest ways that people often do it through these Petries and through these divine ancestors is actually through religion. I mean, you'll often see that people that have planets in Magha Nakshatra, they'll not only have a strong connection to their family, but then they look for higher teachings. And it's usually, if nothing else, some kind of spiritual belief, some kind of religious belief, which there's nothing wrong with that, for sure. But often, especially in this day and age, because we have a lot of options, we start looking and we want it all to make sense as well. And all of these teachings, all these Indian teachings, the yoga, the Vedic astrology, it doesn't overcome or negate or contradict other religions. It's in fact, it explains them, it clarifies them. It can make someone who really resonates with Christ understand Christ on a much deeper level, or Buddha or Mohammed. I mean, people of all religions, and it's universal teaching, right? Just like math. Math is a universal teaching. There is no, Jewish math or Hindu math. I mean, there's different math is still going to work regardless of the culture. And that's what these Vedic teachings are. They're science. So absolutely, you can understand these things, Lisa, and I appreciate you asking. And of course, you get access to all of those bonus classes now, and everybody, at least most people, understand about the zodiac signs. Even just the one about understanding the zodiac signs, even hearing me talk about the other things are very, it's very transformative for you. So again, just to sort of wrap up here, I like to keep it under an hour, right around that time. But we have this, again, this full moon is really a time when the polarities get activated. We have the sun there in Aquarius, where we're really trying to dial in the collective identity, the collective consciousness of the sun in Aquarius, right? That's really what we're mainly focusing on, because wherever the sun is, there's a lot of focus on that. It's like, okay, who am I as part of culture and society? What is my place in the culture? And it's almost like our individuality is kind of feels overwhelmed. So the full moon in Leo is like, here it is. It's this. This is the thing. And so it really works on that polarity quite a bit. And so this is a thing to really be noticing. And like I say in the update that I did, that I posted on Instagram and Facebook and other places, that it's really a time to notice and introspect and feel the consequences of your big bad self, you might say, your big bad Leo, and what you're presenting as truth, right? And how that's coming back to you, and whether or not it's really creating the collective world consciousness and whatnot that you think it is, right? And notice the reflections that are also coming back to you from people that you care about. Is that thing that makes you feel personally empowered? Is it really for the greater good? Like, for example, a momentary thing that again, if it's not just about sharing on social media, but even commenting or this or that, or some kind of thing that we might get involved in, and not just on social media, in your private life as well, your personal life. I'm using this as a collective thing because we can see these things play out on that level, but of course in your personal life as well. Those ways that you're throwing down and saying no in your community, maybe at your work, at the culture of, where you work, or again, about all the issues and causes that we're so fired up about now. Are we sure that this is actually in the greater good? Again, what do the people you respect the most say in this regard, especially like your beloved gurus? Are things as black and white as you would like them to be? I'm going to give you an example, and it's a controversial one, but I'm going to talk about it in nuance, and it's the thing about vaccines, okay? It's a subtle thing, and I've always said it's subtle. And again, I'm not going to get into things like mandates or whatever, because I don't like any of that. No one likes it, but particularly about how we respond to it. Most of the people that I know, because I'm involved in the holistic health world, conscious health world, they can very much come down on anti-vax, anti. We shouldn't do it. We shouldn't have it, da-da-da-da. And it's very easy to say that's legitimate, because who wants the world jacked up on vaccines? They're technologies. They're not natural. They're not holistic. Very easy to say that. However, and again, these are people with strong immune systems. They have this already there. However, what about the people who aren't into all of that? Most of the people who don't have much immunity, who are susceptible, who eat terrible food and who are still in process. Are we not going to, take care? That's most people. And again, so then we also have to be careful. It's not black or white. I've seen so many of my friends, and this is just personal and this is legitimate, who have been so against and who have spread this idea that people shouldn't get vaxes and stuff like that. And they have elderly friends and parents of friends and whatnot who have died, because those are people who don't have the same kind of immunity. They're not doing those kinds of practices. So again, we have to be careful advocating from our point of view what's right for everybody. It's not right for everybody. Some people, they can die if they get it. They don't have strong immune systems. They don't have a lot of agni. They don't have a lot of buildup. Their body is always trying to just survive the food they're eating, because there's all the preservatives and all this other stuff. And that's transcendent of age and everything else. It can be very deadly. And so we can't just say, well, no, all of it is evil, all of it's terrible, all of it is bad. I'm just talking about a nuanced perspective. And all I'm saying here is that it's very easy for us to advocate that this thing should just go away. But does that include everything possible? Now, of course, from the other side as well is true. Does that mean we have to mandate it for everybody? No. This is where things get so clogged up right now, all of the polarizing. And the truth is somewhere in the nuance, and it's not easy, but it also doesn't mean that the people that don't agree are the devil, or that everything is this kind of thing, this, again, conspiracy or the worst thing possible. As someone just said in the comments, it's not this or that. Sometimes it's this and that. Not sometimes, pretty much always. Almost every situation is this and that. By the way, same way with astrology. You see, one of the reasons why I see it this way is I think this way. I've been thinking this way for my whole life, especially like the this and that. I'm glad the poster just made that comment, and I'll just put it up there. This is something that I teach with astrology all the time, because people are used to one thing negating something else constantly in astrology. What's more important, this or that? So it's debilitated, but it's also Nichabanga. So does that cancel it? Is this stronger than that? What trumps that? Is this better than that? There is no this or that in almost anything in life. It's this and that, and there's a mixture, there's a ratio, there's a proportionality to things. Everything. There's nothing that's not that. And so, and again, I'm talking also just from my point of view, where so many in of the people that are around me, again, I'm not an advocate for anything. I've been out of the Western allopathic medical system forever, but I also see that, okay, this thing is what it is. And there are people that don't have the immune system I have, and they should get a shot because that thing is going to save their damn life. It's going to save their life. And this is what the shots are doing now at this point. And yes, there's been misinformation all along the way for many reasons. It's confusing. It's morphing. There's all kinds of wonder about whether it came out of a lab. All of that's there. It's complicated. This is why, these are the reasons why those memes and the polarizing extremes, we have to be careful with it. That's the point of this part of it, is just that we have to be careful with what we're advocating. I'm talking about this because there's a couple people that I know specifically who, and again, I didn't guilt trip them or anything like that, but they were talking. I've had a few friends now who lost elderly friend, like the mother of a friend or an aunt of a friend, or older people who definitely should have gotten vaccinated because these people did not have the physiology, the mindset. These were not healthy people. Now, my friend was healthy, into Ayurveda and yoga and purification, and people are telling others, don't get vaccinated, spreading information that, I'm not saying it's their fault that the other people died. I'm not saying that. But in retrospect, they're like, wow, should I have really said all of that? Because, and again, when I would speak to them, it's not like I was telling them that anything was their fault or anything, but I'm like, look, these people should have, these are the kinds of people that needed the vaccine, the people that drink and eat fast food and just don't have a good immunity, right? So again, the truth is a complicated, subtle thing. And everything is this and that. So thank you, B. It'd be wonderful, B, if you had your actual name, but that's another pet peeve for another time. But I appreciate that you said that, because yes, this is really a deeper truth. And so keep these things in mind, and they could very much be weighing on you. And again, the reason I also use these examples is that I use that example because this is something that I've seen recently. And I've seen it 3 or 4 or 5 times. I mean, I've been doing a lot of readings, a lot of consultations, and also just people that I come in contact with a lot. I see this themes showing up 3, 4, or 5 times. Then I start seeing these shifts happen. And these are the kinds of patterns that I see emerge, where we're coming out of some very polarized times. Of course, there's still a lot of polarizing things going on, of course. But then we get these lunations, and the Aquarius Leo axis is just jammed with how am I as an individual and my power and my strength supporting or detracting from the world that I want to see, and the messages that I'm putting out. Are they really helpful? Or the things that I'm believing, or the things I'm advocating for? So keep that in mind, folks. And again, there's some great times ahead. I mean, these are very tricky times as well, but we have some powerful times coming up in a few months when Jupiter moves into Pisces. Saturn is still going to be in Capricorn for quite a while. We're going to have exalted Mars. So right now we're dealing with this personal empowerment aligned with the collective. And one of the ways, again, that I show up in this way is to share my teachings and my community with people who want to learn. And I definitely hope that you will want to learn formally, want to learn correctly. Again, even if you're a beginner and you want to see how astrology is laid out by someone who has been doing it for 10, 15 years. This is really like an overview of my certification course as well, but it's not $1,000, and it laid out systematically so that you see, so you understand the intelligent structure, not just of astrology, but of life, because ultimately that's what astrology is really showing in its highest sense. So thank you all for joining me, and take care.